In the World Wide Web, the nonsensical and illogical comments of the underworld are hunted by the detectives of the Dusty Comments email crime unit. These are their stories.
Hey, grace and peace, everybody. Now, Lori Lightfoot, she's caused a little bit of stir as it relates to the infamous now Lightfoot report on the financial state of Dalton, Illinois. She sat down and did an interview that I thought was kind of interesting. It gave a little bit more light to what she was doing and why the report was like it was. So let's just go through it and check it out. Let's go.
Or alarming thing that you uncovered in your 9-month investigation?
I think it was the level of systematic, intentional effort to shield from the village trustees and the public what the true financial state of the village was. I mean, we see in Mayor Henyard and her key people in her administration just this reckless disregard for governmental norms, spending on whatever she wanted without seeking any kind of budgetary approval, without looking to see whether or not the spending aligned with the budget, just doing whatever she wanted as if she was all powerful and had no accountability to anyone.
You mentioned Thornton Township
Mhm.
and similar issues happening there. How concerned should residents in those 17 communities be about this?
I think they should be very concerned. Look, we only saw a little tip of the iceberg of what was happening in Thornton Township, but all the things that we saw suggested that the same kind of disregard for any kind of fiscal fiduciary responsibility, spending in excess, was happening in Thornton Township, but at an elevated level because it's a bigger budget. What we also saw was, lots of people having credit cards in their own name and spending it on a range of things that if I were in Thornton Township government, I'd want to know, were these legitimate government purposes or not? I think there's a lot of questions that remain for what's happening in Thornton Township, that hopefully now that the government is back up and running, somebody will say, we need to have some oversight over this.
You also brought up her boyfriend, Kamal Woods, the position he holds in that was possibly he may not be qualified to hold that position?
Well, we have no idea because his personnel file had about 2 pieces of paper in it, and it was mostly the paperwork to get him paid. There was no resume, no background information, no letters of reference. So one doesn't know whether or not he's actually qualified to hold the job that he was given at taxpayer expense.
So residents
Wow.
have been asking lawmakers to step in, look at this for years. I've seen the letters.
Yes.
It's been going on. They've tried why is no one paying attention?
Okay, let's just give that a second to breathe. So we know that they've been spending recklessly without regard. And now it's interesting she threw out the Kamal Woods because there's other people as well that are probably uncertified, unqualified to be in these roles and positions. And these are high paying positions. I think Kamal Woods, rumor had it, he was making 100,000 plus. That's crazy. So I think that's interesting. Now, this is something I've heard. I haven't heard rather a lot of people talk about is they've been asking for help. So it's not like the trustees have just been not doing anything. They've been asking for help. So let's see what they say.
To what is happening in Dalton.
Well, let me say this. Yes, the residents of Dalton, as well as the elected officials there, have been asking for help at every level of government, state level, county level, and frankly, the U.S. Attorney's Office, the State's Attorney's Office, and most have not responded or turned a deaf ear to what's going on in Dalton, which is unfortunate because a lot of this stuff that we've uncovered could have been uncovered years ago had there been a consistent look at what was happening there. It didn't have to get this far for so many years, but those are questions that those other elected officials, I think, are going to have to answer. But what I will also say is what's happening in Dalton is not unique, unfortunately. There is issues across the Southland. And I know that because over the course of our work in Dalton, I've heard from elected officials in other Southland municipalities, other stakeholders down there who have told a tale of lack of transparency around finances, excessive spending, travel, and so forth that's happening in municipality after municipality. And they too are being shut out from getting access to information that they're entitled to as elected officials, and the public is being shut out through FOIA and otherwise. This is not a problem that is unique to Dalton, sadly. So I think hopefully this is a wake-up call for those other municipal leaders that eventually the pendulum is going to swing in your direction and that they really need to clean up their act. But it's going to take people standing up and demanding more certainly going to the polls and voting, but also consistently being their own watchdog of what's happening in their towns or village, and making sure that there's a light that's shined on the activities of these governments so that people don't enrich themselves or squander precious taxpayer dollars that aren't done and used in the benefit of residents in those municipalities.
With that in mind, and the other communities that this may be happening in, would you continue, or would you do an investigation like this in other Southland communities?
Well, I'm in discussions with some of those communities, and we'll see how things transpire. Certainly, I've had a lot of conversations and offered support and advice. We'll see whether or not I get involved again in another place. But I just think that there's a better way to do business. And, look, I would also just say, as a Black woman raised at a time when Black people having any positions of power were such a rarity, my parents taught me, you got to represent not only just your family, but your community. And to see elected officials who are the same race as the people in their towns doing this to them, it hurts my heart. I mean, it really does. That was frankly a big motivating factor for me to get involved in Dalton. We can and do better. We have plenty of great examples across the country of Black leadership that is excellent and doing things the right way. But it's harmful to everything that we stand for when we see this kind of conduct happening, as happened in Dalton and now Thornton Township.
It's interesting you say that, because Mayor Henyard has said numerous times that people are coming after her because she is a Black woman.
No, she's made a spectacle of herself. My family, my wife and I and my daughter were in Houston last spring of 2024. My daughter had a AAU basketball tournament, and my wife and I stole away for one night to go to a local barbecue joint, but out of the main downtown area. And it's a tiny little place. You walk in, you got to queue up, you get a tray, cafeteria style, and get your food. And as we walked in, there was a table of older gentlemen that were sitting, and they looked at me, and I thought, uh-oh, what is this going to be? So we just kind of shuffled through the line. And as we got close and I was rounding the bend, I heard somebody say, "Excuse me." And I thought I was standing in the way. So I moved out of the way. And the gentleman said, no, don't go away. And I turned and I looked at him, and he said, "Are you going to get that, Mayor Tiffany Henyard?" Now, this is down in Houston. And then he quickly said, "But if you do, I don't know what I'm going to watch on YouTube." And in some ways it's funny, but the fact is she made a spectacle of herself, calling herself the super mayor. All this spending, which was basically like a perpetual campaign. How did that benefit the residents of Dalton? It didn't. And now they've got a big financial mess that they're going to have to dig out of. But I'm encouraged by what I've seen and heard from the residents of that town. They understand what good government is about. They understand what they should be expecting from their elected officials, but they've got to show up and vote.
Is that your message to them? Show up and vote?
You have to. I mean, you look at what happened 4 years ago in the election that made Mayor Henyard the mayor of the village. Only 9.5% of the registered voters voted. I've really never heard of a turnout that low.
That's low.
So I just think your vote is one of the most powerful tools in a democracy. You cannot complain about the government if you don't do your part to make sure you get a government that you actually deserve.
Okay, I have to admit, I did not realize that only 10% of the registered vote. Now, I don't know how many people are registered to vote, but that's kind of crazy. That's wild. Let's keep it going.
At the end, you mentioned that you'd given some recommendations to trustees that they were already trying to implement. Can Dalton right this ship and get back to what you say is good government?
Look, I'm 100% convinced that Dalton can come out of this dark period in time, but it's going to take people of goodwill, not exploiting the residents, but working on behalf of the residents. They obviously have a municipal election that's coming up here in about a month. That will, I think, really be a telltale sign as to whether or not they're able to move forward with leadership that is serving on behalf of the residents. They're going to need some help, I think, from the state legislature because their budget deficit is probably still around $6 million, but all the back debt that's owed really pushes them probably somewhere between 10 and 15 million. That's not an insurmountable amount, but if Dalton is going to have to fend for itself, then it is going to be a huge, huge challenge that they may not be able to meet. They're going to need some help from Springfield. There's no question about that.
Conservative?
That's crazy. That is crazy work. 1 million is a lot to somebody. She just said 10 million, like it was no problem. Wow, that's nasty work.
Maybe?
No, I think that they're going to need to have, with strings attached, of course, but I think they're going to need to have some appropriations to help bail them out. There is a process that was put in place some years ago. I think they qualify for that. And I know that that's one of the things that's under discussion. Once they see what's the leadership of Dalton going to be going forward, is Mayor Henyard going to return, or is it going to be a new mayor, new board of trustees to lead Dalton forward?
two more questions.
Yep.
The alleged victim in Las Vegas, you said she did not cooperate with your investigation.
Correct.
She has told me she did cooperate as much as her attorney would let her. What do you say to that?
Well, that may be true. Look, when you know, as a lawyer myself, I have an ethical obligation that I can't contact someone directly who's represented by counsel. We did try to get her cooperation. The other police officer who was a witness to cooperate, they're represented by the same attorney. We never heard back from that attorney. More recently, people came to me and said, hey, she wants to talk to you. And I said, I'm willing to talk to her, but she's got to get authorization from her lawyer. We never heard from them again. So she may have wanted to cooperate. She's the client. She didn't tell, obviously, a director lawyer to say, hey, I want to cooperate with Mayor Lightfoot's investigation. So what we know about it, we know from police records, we know from the litigation that has been filed. Obviously, people were in our ear about a lot of things, but that was one where we weren't able to make much progress on because we didn't get the cooperation of key witnesses.
Final question here. Any plans for you to run for mayor or any other office again? Because your name is coming up a lot in a lot of circles.
No, you know what? I have no intentions of running for any office again under any circumstances. I had the best job in the world. Every day serving as the mayor of the city was an incredible honor. I don't see myself running for any other office again.
Okay.
One more question.
All right, that's fine.
And you mentioned this the other night. Some people ask me, what's taking so long with the federal government? What's taking so long? There have been subpoenas for why? Any idea?
Well, I don't really know. And, look, they're not going to bring charges unless they feel very confident that they're going to end up in a conviction. That's been the standing practice of the local U.S. Attorney's Office for decades and decades. What I will also say is under longstanding Department of Justice policy, no charges can be brought against an elected official or others that could have an influence over an election. There's a 90-day window that nothing can happen regarding charges before that election, because of course the Department of Justice doesn't want to look like it's putting its thumb on the scale in favor or against a particular candidate or candidates. So the 90-day window really started back in November. Nothing's going to happen at least through the end of February, beginning of March, as it pertains to any elected official. Well, whether or not there are charges that are going to be brought against others, whether or not indictments that have already been announced will be superseded, I think those things, the latter, the superseding indictments, are definitely something that will probably happen. I think it's an open question as to whether or not there are going to be charges brought against Mayor Henyard or others. I don't think anybody knows that.
And again, another question I asked you the other night, with the changing of the administration, could this impact this investigation?
It certainly could. I would be.
Okay, I want to stop right there. That was pretty serious. That 90-day window, and they're not going to bring charges within 90 days of somebody who's running for office. That's problematic for her. That's super problematic because, again, Lori gave out and laid out the time frame. I think somebody who said she's going to get indicted this spring. I think they're probably right. Because if she gets removed from the mayoralship, she loses that role. It's a wrap. So in February, she loses that role, then there's no reason that they can't indict her by the end of March. Wow. Okay, thank you, Lori. Let's go.
Be surprised if it did. Every administration comes in with a set of priorities, and those priorities certainly are communicated through the Department of Justice and the the U.S. Attorney's offices across the country. I'd be surprised if there was a change in the course of the investigation of the village of Dalton and lots of different folks as a result of the change in administration. Possible, but I'd be surprised if that happened.
Shout out to Lori Lightfoot. That wasn't a bad interview. It wasn't bad. I'm glad that she did what she did. I'm glad she said what she said as it relates to Dalton and possibly Thornton. Hopefully she'll be able to, the input that she's able to give will be that kind of input that somebody can apply and will ultimately help right the ship, because boy, it is a mess. But let me know what you thought about the interview down below. Feel free to give me all your comments, all that kind of good jazz like that. I appreciate you helping me hit 50,000 subscribers by the end of April. You all rock. Thank you so very much. And until next time, everybody, grace and peace.
For deal with Christian. Yo, for deal with Christian. Smash that bell. Don't smash it. Just smash it. Hit that like for deal with Christian. For Demo Christian, smash that bell for DWC. Yo, smash it, just smash it. Hit that like for Demo Christian.